Let's stop recording.
I might just stop it.
And I'll tell you who's on Zoom. It's on that little table behind Karen.
Sure, I'll do it.
I didn't check myself, I'm sorry. So Anna, Laura, Doyle.
That's a nice big one. People come in.
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay.
Oh, well, what do you want me to
I
do?
asked you to do
To
it.
do this?
Oh, no, I'm good at it.
Okay,
Let
tell
me
Karen,
see.
let Karen.
So
No.
many people. here.
Okay, go ahead. It's time to start.
Okay, Kristen's still. Get the attendance awards. Okay.
Yes. That's what we're going for.
Mark and Jennifer did, except Jennifer's
Let's
midterm.
see.
Right.
How do we do that one?
Okay, so I want to go ahead and start talking, if that's okay. So tonight I want to talk about that chapter 5, the development of ego, in which he covers the 5 skandhas. And I want to go back to when we first started talking in this class about the 3 collections that they made at the time after the Buddha died, where they assembled his teachings. They organized them into 3 pieces. There was the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidharma. Okay, and the Vinaya, just reminding you, is the ethics, the rules and disciplines adopted by his followers and taught to all of us too, by us. Sutra is the doctrine, the teachings, his words as recounted by the people who heard them, and what we call the Buddhist canon. And then Abhidharma is training in wisdom, or prajna. And Doug has touched on all 3 of these over the past weeks, and tonight I want to focus on the Abhidharma. And the word Abhidharma is translated usually as higher teachings or about teachings. One source said the Abhidharma texts represent a generalization and reorganization of the doctrines presented piecemeal in the narrative sutra tradition. So this is the sort of standing back from a drone's eye view and saying, okay, this is this category, and that's where all the lists come from. I mean, sometimes the lists are in the sutras, but oftentimes they're extracted from the sutras. So there are hundreds of commentaries, there are Abhidharma texts, and then hundreds of commentaries written about them, as Doug has alluded to. And I am recording. Okay, sorry. Moment of panic. So the lists are tools for generating a precise understanding of experience. So we use the lists to give expression to wordless experiences. So that'll make sense in a minute. But in other words, it's a systematic, abstract description of worldly phenomena and of our own experience. And so people call this, the Abhidharma, the science of Buddhism, or the cosmology, or the psychology. So in this chapter, Trungpa does a deep dive into one Abhidharma subject, the 5 skandhas. And such a deep dive into the Abhidharma would not normally be part of a class like this, because it's abstract and it's somewhat advanced. All of the early students of the Buddha would have understood and studied the skandhas, but not necessarily lay people like us. Okay, I'm just saying that. And also, Doug and I have been focusing a lot on experience rather than abstraction. So when he tells you about one of his lists, it's from how he feels it, how you feel yourself in this list on your cushion or in your life. And because experience is emotional, and we can see emotion, it's easier to grasp than an abstract concept. You know, we can see ourselves making a mountain out of a molehill, or developing a grudge, or trying to blame somebody for our own mistakes. When we're meditating or going through life, we can see those things happening. But the point I'm trying to make, that the skandhas, this 5-step process of developing ego, is not exactly like that. It's sort of an abstraction. It happens very, very fast, and it's very subtle. So it's important to understand it, but it's not like you're going to see it. And I would say a good example of this idea is a biology text that describes how your body transforms food into energy and body parts and other things, or how the chemistry of your body can take a certain mineral in your blood and it helps carry oxygen and so forth. You can understand that, you can know about that, but you're not expecting to sit and feel your body digesting the food and see it happening real time. It's just something that you need to know about. So, or that you don't need to know about, but we want to know about it, right? So, if you hear this stuff and you say, I don't know what that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, I just want to preface it by this description of that. You know, it's an idea, it's a conceptual framework. The other thing I want to start with is that Trungpa is a Mahayana teacher, actually a Vajrayana teacher, which means that he looks at these foundational, the Abhidharma, and all the other, the Vinaya and the Sutra, from a perspective that developed in Buddhism much later. The textbook says Mahayana came about 500 years after the Buddha's death. So, or maybe it was even 900 years later. It's much later. And so we could probably argue about the details, but I think that the main development from Theravada to Mahayana is a new emphasis on space and emptiness. Whereas the Theravada is looking very, very closely at your internal world. Not just that, you're also looking at relationship and all that kind of stuff, but as you read this chapter from a Mahayana teacher, you may see that it's different in his approach. It may be a subtle difference. But for example, he starts, when he's talking about the development of ego, he starts with space. And I'm quoting him from page 74 of the book, where he says, fundamentally, there is just open space, the basic ground of what we really are. Our most fundamental state of mind before the creation of ego is such that there is basic openness, basic freedom, a spacious quality, and we have now and have always had this openness. So, instead of starting from the sort of internal experience or the ground level experience, which the Theravada addressed so well, we're starting from the sort of blue sky or whatever. And so I want to say that Trungpa, he's this teacher that Mick and I learned Buddhism from, basically, after his death, I must say, actually. But when he came to the West in the 70s, a lot of people, he was Tibetan, so there was this notion that it was magical, it was like exotic, you know, and in fact, it was the age of Aquarius. It was. And in fact, his first students were literally hippies on a commune in Vermont, his first students in America. So he had the obligation, and he totally believed in teaching people the ground first, before he got into the later development of Buddhism. So he's very emphasized very strongly things like the Five Skandhas. This sort of, you have to know how you work, how your mind works. You have to settle into your being. You have to tame your mind, basically, and develop an intimate experience with the workings of your own mind before I'm going to teach you any of the voodoo stuff. Okay? So,
Can I comment? I
Yeah.
like what he said there, and if we begin our study with these dreams of extraordinary, enlightening, and dramatic experiences, I think that's a lot of what's happening with the movement of outside of typical spirituality, traditional denominations and religion, and alternative medicines, because
Yeah.
a lot of people are getting access really quickly. Honestly, that kind of happened to me. I was using it for therapeutic reasons, but then it all came open, and I was like, I didn't know where to go with it. And so this resonated big time. Then we build up our expectations and preconceptions so that later when we were actually working on our path, our mind will be occupied largely with what we will be rather than what is. I've spent like the last 5 years like trying to get somewhere because I thought that was like the end goal, even though I read enough to say right here still is your path. I just was like, but I've experienced this. I've got to go there now. This is so important, and so this chapter resonated big time with me with where I kind of am with my path, which was so interesting. I had no expectations of that at all.
that is really interesting. And the thing is, even though I said his early students were hippies, we're all hippies too. We're all still like looking for like, where's the magic that's going to make this all come together and all work out fine and finally make sense, you know? So we always have to watch for those kind of tendencies in ourselves, right? And he was really good at saying, okay, back to basics, back to the reality, just don't do that. And so he had an expression that if you have an experience in your meditation that feels like some kind of enlightenment or something, you should disown it. That was the training, disown it. It's like, okay, that's just thinking, like every other thinking.
Yeah.
No big deal. Because it's so easy to kind of get into that.
Get attached, and then nothing else feels real, or everything that is right in front of you doesn't feel right or real or authentic. Like you feel like you're living some other life, and so it's kind of very valuable.
So, after talking about space, he says that our nature is open and free and spacious, but we are driven by emotions to construct elaborate fantasies that confuse us. So we've talked about in here the big blue sky behind the clouds of confusion that we construct to protect ourselves. And he's looking closely at exactly how step by step we create the clouds and the confusion. So this is both an experiential and a scientific description of what happens in our minds constantly. So it begins, and I'm quoting now from page 75. He says, it begins with space and intelligence. He says, our true nature is like a spacious hall where there is room to dance about, where there is no danger of knocking things over or tripping over things. I like that image too, very much. Yeah. Let yourself go. It's all the room you need. But then we become self-conscious and aware that I am dancing in that space. And then at that moment, we lose the direct experience of space and feel that we are a separate, solid entity. And that is the birth of the first skandha, form. First skandha is form. And then he says that we kind of black out. We ignore the space and fixate on the imaginary self that we've just essentially created. And he calls this the Sanskrit word avidya, which means not seeing or not knowing. And it's a kind of active ignorance because we've turned away from what we knew before to focus on this new thing, this self that has popped up out of nowhere. And once that ignoring has been established, the whole process unfolds. So first, we have to protect this new self. And so we focus on trying to understand what's outside, what might be threatening us. And that's when we develop what he calls an extremely efficient feeling mechanism. That's like a radar system. And a focus on sensations. And this is what he calls the second skandha, feeling. And next, we try to judge what we're feeling to determine how we should react. Should we push it away, pull it towards us, or ignore it altogether? So this is not a well-developed system of analysis at this point. It's just an instantaneous, instinctual reaction, of drawing away, reaching out, drawing away, or ignoring. This is the third skandha, perception. So again, there's not much ego here yet. This is just a very kind of visceral and subconscious process so far. But then these perceptions begin to have names or labels because we start to fit them into more sophisticated categories. There's intelligence involved at this point, and I think about this like we're starting to make a script for a movie, and we identify these things that we see as villains, heroes, or innocent bystanders. We put them into a story. I know, I'm telling you, this is kind of puzzlement is appropriate.
No, actually, as you're talking, I just listened to a podcast today from the evolutionary psychologist, and I
It's
had
the
read
same-
this chapter, and I'm going, Doug, you're saying the same.
Same thing.
Y'all are saying the same thing. I'm going,
Yeah.
okay, no wonder I'm getting into this. I was puzzled. I'm going, oh my God, they're talking to each other. Go ahead.
Well, so this is where what Chogyam Trungpa calls our logic of security that we've created that makes us feel like we really understand what's going on. Even though, again, remember, this is all a fabrication. We're still dancing in empty space. But this is the fourth skandha, concept. And finally, we reach the last stage of the development of ego, the fifth skandha, consciousness. And here's what he says about this stage, and this is on page 79. At this level, an amalgamation takes place. The intuitive intelligence of the second skandha, the energy of the third, and the intelligence of the fourth combine to produce thoughts and emotions. So once we have thoughts and emotions, we have all the other details that are described in the Abhidharma. We have the 6 realms of existence, and we have the 12 links of dependent origination, and we have on and on and on and on, because we have a personality now, basically, to work with all of that stuff. And so those lists all help us understand what we're experiencing and why and how it all comes together, and how we prevent ourselves from living in the vast open space that we started from. So you go from direct experience to this like movie script, like that, okay? And over again, a zillion times a day. And you sort and categorize and all of that. So he uses a monkey analogy. I never liked that analogy. It didn't make sense. And first of all, I don't like to pretend I'm a monkey or whatever, I just think there could have been a different one, but he does describe the whole process if you read it through. Maybe y'all liked it, I don't know. But he does end up at the 6 realms of existence, which are the God realms, all the different ways that humans can exist. And you can read and study about all these things a lot. It's all very well developed in Buddhist teachings. But I just want to emphasize that none of this is real. When you're in the empty room with the open space and dancing around, none of this other stuff is there with you, okay? So we get masterful at, oh yeah, that's this, you know, but we forget that we're still just describing concepts, a conceptual description of direct experience. So somehow it's a challenge, but somehow we have to try to focus on the direct experience and let go of the concepts, even though they're pretty entertaining and they help us. You know, there's a purpose for them. They work. But we can't forget that they are also a construction. You know, they are. Reality is different. Your body's going to digest the food whether you know how to do it or not, whether you're thinking about it, telling it what to do, or anything else. There's this process going on, and you can just also let the process happen.
See, I get puzzled, because I understand what you're talking about, the concepts and building, the intellectualization, and then you say the word space and ground. I'm going, well, that's a concept. What are you talking about? I'm much more comfortable with intellectualization and labeling, but then you say space.
Right.
What is that?
I know.
I don't know where to go with that. And I don't expect a discussion, but if you see puzzlement on my face now, then that's what it is.
Yeah. So it's a good thing to kind of puzzle, you know? It's kind of like, what is this space they're talking about? Do I know it? Do I feel it?
I definitely don't. That I know I don't. I do know that.
Well, you
I
know,
have no idea what you're talking about.
I've thought about this a lot. I mean, I've been thinking about this, and I'm glad this comes up. And that, is it not, when you get down to it, if you are fully present, that's the space.
Yeah.
Presence. And what happens a million times a day is like you are present, and on some deep level, psychological level, it's a little unnerving because it's spacious, there's no grasping it, yet there you are in it. And some little twitch causes you to reflect on your bewilderment. And the chain of events starts trying to get ground, which builds up the skandhas, which then builds up your sense of selfness. You know, but I've heard it somewhere, I've always loved this idea, is that we're not living in a solid, opaque cloud of ignorance or confusion until we break out and become enlightened. It's perforated, it's like lots of little holes everywhere, all throughout the day, but there's a kind of so normal that you don't even notice it. And it's fleeting, so that it's easy to just let it pass by. There's no sense of like, oh, relief or, you know, whatever, but it just passes by without noticing. But, so it's not unusual, it's happening all the time. We're in the moment, we're just not noticing it, kind of thing. Anyway, I go on.
I looked up, after reading that chapter, I Googled Trungpa and like the connection to openness or spaciousness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming, or it's in here, because I saw it or read it somewhere, about the cocoon of ego.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and y'all are so much more, y'all. So I get little glimpses, like he's saying there, you've got little holes here and there. And I've only had like 2 or 3 where I'm like, oh, it's there, and I live in it, and it's like right here, I get it now, in this moment. I'm like, I can't wait to just like really get to enjoy this, and then the veil drops, or the cocoon has rebuilt itself. The cocoon of thoughts and conditioning that we've all talked about from our childhood and from life, and then it builds based on conditioning every moment. Like you're constantly rebuilding the cocoon with new definitions, new parameters. And so now it's looking through the lens of what happened to you yesterday, and now that defines the way you look through life. And then, like I said, there's moments where you're like, oh, I see through all that. I'm right here in this moment. And that is so rare for me. But that, to me, is spaciousness, when I'm like, I'm not going through the lens, I'm not checking on, quote, if I'm okay, like, do I feel safe in this moment? That's kind of really what's happening with the cocoon for me, is the more I look at it, the more I kind of dissect those thoughts, is always, it's really, mine is a lot of childhood stuff of like checking in with things that happened back then. And a parent from that position too, which is really interesting. And being present with my kids, my kids bring it the most. It's like, that's when I feel the most spacious. So I don't know, if you, like, yeah, I'm trying to think of like an example of, and it just would happen, like, and you're just, oh, here it is, it's right here, oh my gosh. And you want to hold on, and the more you want to hold, once you notice it, for me, once I notice it, it's like,
Yeah. So
and I assume this will come more often.
well, the training, the way he taught us to meditate was he emphasized the gaps between your thoughts. And so we were taught to look for the gaps, so our experience of the world is of this solid thing. You are a solid thing, and you are, I'm Cheryl, I've always been Cheryl, even though that's simply not true. I'm not 7-year-old Cheryl anymore.
Mm-hmm.
She's long gone, but I still identify as if I were. And so the reality is that we have to constantly reclaim this identity that we hold on to, because it's always breaking down, because it isn't real, because it's right.
So the thoughts are almost rebuilding the cocoon. Some of the thoughts.
Yes.
That's what. So when you drop the thoughts,
Yes.
then that's that spaciousness.
Yeah.
Almost,
Exactly.
Not letting it rebuild. Okay.
Do you want to say something, Doug?
Sorry.
I always want to say something. Yeah. So yeah, right. Because we this I love the story. And so what happens is we at first sort of in it's like the Garden of Eden, right?
Yeah.
You're okay with living in spaciousness. That's natural. But then once you get this idea that I'm a separate self, then all that sort of evaporates. And now this idea of self, that's your safety. That's where you get used to that, and then that's where you want to be all the time. And so when it comes apart and you suddenly see that spaciousness, well, that's frightening. It's like you don't know how to handle having no reference points. It's like, well, what about me? And so you quickly, the cocoon comes back on. It's like, oh, well, yeah, that's right. I'm me, and this is what I'm doing today, and this is what's important and what's not important. And you put all of that back together, because that's what makes you feel safe. And so we're constantly constructing our very poorly constructed, cocoon of the self, so that we can feel like we know what's going on. Because when you're just out there in space, there's no reference points. There's no up or down, and we don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, it can look like a grocery list too. I just did it. Literally, I wrote this on Thursday and came to mix on. And I did, and that was one of my, I hate to even be judgmental of the sit, but like that was one of those times where I could actually let go of thought, and I was like, oh, grocery list. This is me trying to grasp onto being here and being something other than just being spacious. And I was but since then I've been like, oh, where did I go? Like, that was so nice.
Well, it's a process, it's
Yes.
a training process, and so in the way he taught us the meditation instruction, you every time you felt a thought or emotion, you called it thinking, you labeled it thinking. That was the first kind of basic instruction. Just to be able to see that a thought had arisen, is an accomplishment. Thinking. And then you let it go. Thinking, and then you let it go. Eventually, you get tired of that because there's so much thinking, that you start to see the gaps between the thoughts. You start to think about, or to notice, or to look for this openness that he kept talking about. It's like you, I'd be going, what the hell are you talking about? I don't have that.
Right. But I mean, if you're not, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you're not a visual person, it's also, like you say, it's the gap, it's the silence. And a lot of people think of that as space, or they sort of perceive it as spaciousness, but it's really, like you say, you're getting a little break between my obsession with myself and what I am, and you get that little bit of a gap where it's like, oh yeah.
You can relax in that gap too, because you're not engaged in the work. It's really work. It's so funny how later, I just kind of realized, like, it's exhausting to try to sustain an ego. It's exhausting. It's a constant, it takes all my life force is sucked into this process of pretending that I'm Cheryl, not changing, not gonna die, not whatever, predictable, permanent.
You are your responsibilities, right?
Yeah, and to sustain that, to maintain that, takes your life away, literally takes your life away. And there's no time for you, no space for you it's not allowed in that framework to just be. Just be. One of the things that I learned early on from this whole stuff was to look for space, to literally, it's like, okay, this man is obsessed with space, I don't know what he's talking about. But I started like going through my day and kind of being, first sort of feeling I was in a very busy job, a lot of stuff, children, blah, blah, blah. But it was like, when I would feel the walls closing in, so to speak, I would feel like claustrophobic. I would think, where is the space in this situation? Sometimes I would look for the horizon, just like look out and try to find the space, or look for a gap in the busyness of the day, like, oh wow, I just have a whole minute where I don't have to do anything out of space too. Or, just right after you have a sip of delicious tea, there's this like, not doing anything, not thinking anything, it's just this. So start to look for it and try to see if it's true. And then you begin to become more aligned with that side of things, that spacious side of things. I'm going to get to know this spaciousness and try to let go of the other stuff. And it does change you, it does change you. So, the point is that none of this stuff we think we know is real. Even the Abhidharma isn't real. We have useful skills at categorizing and predicting and making lists and organizing things, and all that kind of stuff is very useful, but it's just an analogy, it's just an abstraction. It's like algebra, or something. It helps define the world and how things work and relationships and all that, but it's just words and numbers. It's not the thing itself. And I think we talked about this last time when Doug was teaching last week about, to me, the most wonderful thing about Buddhism is that it just sparks this curiosity. Like, what? I really want to know what's really going on. That's the most important thing to me. I want to know the truth. I don't want to be fooling myself all the time. And Buddhism doesn't say, it does. There's all these descriptions, there's all these words, there's all these concepts you can use to help you understand what's going on. But the bottom line message is keep looking, keep exposing yourself to the question, what is this? What's happening? And you'll never be done, looking for the reality. But one thing, again, Trungpa always talked about the reality is space. We are like, you can't even, you don't even have, if you look too closely at your body, it's just a bunch of cells running around, and they're coming and going, and they're dying, and there's space in between them, and there's nothing solid about me at all. New cells every 7 years or something like that, so.
Right, completely replaced.
Completely replaced. So,
Just a bag of beans. That
yeah,
was the metaphor.
no, that's okay. What else? The thing is that, again, the process starts with this willful ignorance, which just means ignoring. It's like whistling when you're going through a dark room. It's not so scary, I'll be okay, whatever it takes to get through the dark room. You're still in a dark room, and that whatever you're doing to cheer yourself up is just something you're doing to cheer yourself up, but you don't want to think that you're actually not in a dark room. You want to know where you really are. If that makes any sense. Yeah.
And we want to be able to see clearly.
What?
You want to be able to see clearly, but we're always confusing ourselves, right? I mean, what Theravada uses the skandhas for is these are all things that trick you. These are all things that help. They're sort of tools that are unfortunately provided to you so that you can convince yourself that you're a solid self, right? Because we identify with the body, right? You look in the mirror, that's you, right? And if you ever look in the mirror and it doesn't seem to be you, I mean, that's probably considered to be a psychotic condition, but you can actually try that if it doesn't freak you out.
Right.
Look in the mirror and see it as a stranger. But I mean, it's a body, there's no you to it. And it's the same with the others. You feel some feeling, good, bad, or indifferent, and that just feels like you, man. This is me, I'm happy, or I'm not, and we identify with it. It's so comfortable to say, yes, that's us, but that's really just emotional energy. There's no you in it. And it's the same with, we look at something and immediately a word attaches to it, or a concept, or whatever, it gets identified. That's just mechanical, that's not you. And then, of course, as you go up the chain to the sankharas, all of your thoughts and judgments and everything else you thought about it, well, that all just arose from your experience. That, it just happened accidentally because of your life. There's no you to it. It's just what brains do. They make judgments about things. Yeah. And then you get all the way up to the story of your life, and that's you. This is me in the world of other things. But this is a story you're telling yourself all day long. Right, it's Dolby sound.
Yeah.
So these are all things to trick you into making that sense of self, that cocoon that makes you feel like you know what's going on. I know who I am. No, you don't. Right.
You know who you want to be or who you think you are.
I heard about this intriguing little thing that's in one of those hippie festivals out there that I would like to go, but and it was they have a reverse mirror.
A reverse mirror?
Because when we look at each other in a mirror, it's reversed from what other people see. Right? And so when we're looking at our hair and stuff like this, it goes the other way. That's why when you see whatever. So. But there's a place where you can step in and look at yourself as other people see you. And it's discomforting to some people, but it's odd to everybody because it's like, it's you. So your sense of like that, it goes right to the heart of your sense of your image of yourself,
Right.
Which sounds like, we gotta get one of those stuff.
Oh, yeah, maybe so.
And, but the other thing is like the spasm, I've seen videos of, well, certainly babies, but kids and grown-ups walking in a situation where it becomes a glass floor.
Yeah.
And suddenly there's no
Yeah.
ground.
Right.
And so it's purely visual bit of information that goes, and it causes a spasm, you know? And it's that kind of reaction to that presence that it's before you even thinking about it. Just shoves you back into like, you know, that first form of formation. So
That fear of being untethered happens before you even have time to think about it, right? And it's
Well,
like, no, give me back.
well, isn't it funny? There's so much entertainment based on that kind of thing. Think of fairgrounds and stuff like that, just to like disorient you.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I always, and magic too, is sort of like, what's the big attraction to that? Well, mainly because we know there's some fundamental illusion going on that we're guarding.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So that all of those things give you this little
Just
hint of
a
spaciousness, but it's being done to you. You know it'll be over,
Yeah,
but it's like, ooh, I got a little bit of
yeah.
something else
I
there.
think it's safe.
I think that's exactly right.
So I want to, this is great.
No,
And
sorry.
no. But I just want to again, go back to the idea that you're not really going to see yourself do the five skandhas, blah, 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 any more than you see yourself digesting your breakfast. But it is good to understand that this is the world and how it works. And to introduce a little bit of suspicion, I wonder if it's really like that. I wonder if I'm making this up out of nowhere. I wonder what could be going on. And curiosity is, to me, the best fundamental thing from Buddhism. It's the opposite of a religion that says, here's what you can believe, and you can carry this all the way to your grave, and it'll even get you to heaven. And it's like, are you sure? Are you sure? This, of course, the next, when we go next week to the Heart Sutra and Mahayana, the Heart Sutra is all about how the Abhidharma isn't true. Or it flips the whole thing on its ear. And so it in the first very part of the Heart Sutra, it says, there is no form, there is no feeling, there is no perception. And so I'm just warning you that just when you feel like, okay, I get this skandha thing, it's like, but wait, there's more, Could be. So we're going to read the introduction to the Mahayana in the book, and then chapter 13, the Heart Sutra. And I'm also going to send out with the email and put on the Google Drive. Thich Nhat Hanh made a new translation of the Heart Sutra, a new version of it, in 2014, so just a few years ago. He died just a few years later. And I'm going to share that with you. And that's kind of a radical thing because the Heart Sutra is so sacred to so many Buddhists, but a fresh interpretation of it. We'll look at that.
Is the one in the book is not?
The one in the book is the classical one.
Okay.
There are many, many different versions. But, that's not true. There's what they call a short version, which is the one we're reading, and then there's like a 50-page version in China that is supposed to be the original version. And I believe that one probably goes into more of the Abhidharma and pulls it apart than just the ones that this one does, but anyway.
I'm sorry, you said we're going to read an introduction to something and the Heart Sutra.
Yeah, the introduction to the Mahayana section.
Which is chapter 12, page 143.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So, pages 143 to 145, and then the Heart Sutra, which is only 2 or 3 pages.
Okay.
And then this new one, Thich Nhat
Okay, so it'll be
Hanh.
3 things.
3 things.
Okay.
And again, so this is officially the transition from the elders, teaching of the elders to this new Mahayana tradition. And Mahayana means great vehicle. And it is, well, we'll talk about this more next time, but there's improperly and unrespectfully, Mahayana used to talk about Theravada as the Hinayana, the small vehicle for little children or something, or for selfish people. It was like,
That's really what it was.
right, it was. It was like, oh, sure, take care of yourself, but don't worry about everybody else. Well, we're going to worry about everybody else, so we're the great vehicle. And that's really kind of like where it went. But that's, so no one ever says the Hinayana anymore, at least none of the Tibetans do. They call it the foundational teachings.
And to be a little more charitable, the narrow and the
Narrow.
wider
Yes,
vehicle, which is a little more neutral and less.
narrow, or lesser. It was called lesser,
Yeah.
smaller,
But
lesser.
I mean, the way I see it, the Mahayana sort of revolution, it really saved Buddhism, because the Theravada was very monastic oriented, and the question is whether it could even keep going with what it was. And the Mahayana had this huge, expansive vision that not only every person on earth, but every being in the universe can be integrally on this path. It's not just go feed the monks and maybe in your next life you'll get to do some Buddhism,
Yeah.
And so it really was a revolution and a very needed one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to ask this question. This might be the perfect place.
Yes.
We're talking about two different traditions. And I'm going to do my very best in a short period of time to succinctly say what I was told. And
Yes.
this person is familiar with Buddhism, but I don't know where he was getting this. But he talked about orthodoxy and orthopraxy. That ortho means good or right.
Yeah.
Orthopedics means
So,
straight.
Right.
right teaching and right practice is kind of what I'm hearing you talking
Yes.
about.
Well, and I'm just going to try to repeat
Go
what he
ahead.
said. Orthodoxy, the doxy refers to documents, which refers to beliefs
Right.
that he
Okay.
labeled to put in the Theravada category. And then he said orthopraxy is that of practice. You don't have to believe that you're practicing whatever it is. But that's where he kind of lost me. But I got the impression that he was saying that the Mahayana was about that practice. You don't have to believe anything in particular, that it was experiential, whereas the orthodoxy was learning documents and reading about documents and studying documents, whereas orthopraxy is the practice of. Does that ring a bell with any?
I would dispute it.
I can
actually.
imagine why someone would say that, because you take the sort of the caricature of Theravada and Mahayana, but no, I don't think that's right at all.
Well, I don't know that he labeled it that way, but it sounded like two
Right.
opposing or
I mean,
different
there's
ways.
a lot of Theravada traditions where really all they do is just study and memorize sutras. But of course, there's a huge practice element too. It's all in the
Also
sutras.
meditate, yeah.
And Mahayana, it's very rich and colorful,
Yeah.
but they study like crazy too.
Yeah, they study and they
So-
practice. Both groups practice. But did you see the monks who were walking for peace?
Oh, yes.
Theravada. Right? They were.
Yeah, that was from, not Thich Nhat Hanh, but from Korean tradition, I think.
Yeah, I thought they were, yeah. But
They're
anyway,
close
they're
neighbors anyway.
not Zen. They weren't Zen, they were Theravada.
Theravada is what they led.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that, and look at the effect they had, and look at the practice that the discipline that they demonstrated. And they literally, to me, brought the presence of the Buddha into these troubled times and walked through America and shared it with people, and it was magical. And so, I don't know why I bring that up, except that that's definitely practice. It's not just studying lists of things or anything like that. It's much, much richer than that. It may have been true, and Doug's talking about this historical time when the
Right.
Mahayana blew open the Theravada, but And that might have been what was necessary. There may have been this
I like to
thing
say
that we
those are
don't remember.
caricatures. There's all different traditions in Theravada.
Yeah.
There's all different traditions in Mahayana.
Yes.
And you can always pick out the ones you want to make your art.
Yes.
You know?
Well, this is the sloppy thing about Buddhism, because there's no catechism that
Or
applies
is it
to
there's too many,
everybody.
maybe, I don't know.
It's just like, well, what do you think? You know what I mean? It's sort of like, well, how does it work for you? And so it has evolved, it does evolve, and people are doing it differently in all kinds of ways. But I just read, we have a book group that reads Chogyam Trungpa's books, and we read this 800-page book on the foundation practices, and he called it the path of individual liberation. And so in his teaching, the focus of the Theravada is to free yourself from suffering, which is no small thing, right? If we ever, any of us ever in our lives actually freed ourselves from suffering, that would be amazing. But so it's very focused on discipline and persistence and attention, mindfulness, focusing and being able to put your awareness somewhere and leave it there. And, it's incredibly powerful practices like that. And then in our growing up with him in his world, he would say would happen is that you get yourself tamed, then you start to look up. Your attention goes up like this. You start looking around, and you start looking at, well, what about all these people? What about them? And your focus shifts from you're okay, or you're sort of, I think I think, and I have family members that have been through the AA process, and I think it's similar to that. It's like you start by getting up and making your bed every day, doing the dishes, getting your work done, getting your business taken care of. And that gives you a foundation from which you can then start to relate to other people in a more honest way, more compassionately, skillfully. So the Mahayana is all about that. It's all about working with other people. And it presumes that you've done some work, real work with yourself, and now you're ready to work with the world.
That's
Well, yeah.
But what the Theravadins always say is, when the oxygen masks come out of the ceiling, place your own oxygen mask on your face before you help your family member. If you're dying, you're not going to be a lot of help for this person.
Yeah.
So,
And I would, it's like, I haven't seen a lot arguing this point, but it seems kind of irrefutable in some way, is that if you free yourself from your confusion, you've done it by compassion for yourself, and you've very gently worked on ways to do that. And if you do that, there can't be any fences around you that keeps you from being compassionate to others. So as you become more skillful, so skillful that you can let go of your own identity, that opens you up to everybody else. And so I would say that those monks were walking not for themselves, they were everybody, and they meant it. And so I would say that they have boundless compassion for all beings.
Right.
They had a methodology that really works for them. And it's like, and it's still a solid path. It's not outdated.
No.
I would say that, and I'm all for Mahayana. It's just that it does tread very closely to traditional religiosity dogma. It looks a lot like extending beliefs in the realms and hells and all that stuff, and other lives, and really invests your mind going in that direction in order to develop your compassion.
Yeah.
And you take it seriously,
Yeah.
even though next week you're gonna wipe all that clean, that slate clean a little bit, but what I mean is just like, you're treading very closely to some very heterodoxy religions, you know,
Well,
it's like.
let me just say this about that for a second. What the monks did was extremely compassionate, immensely compassionate. They went through all that barefoot walking,
Right.
all those miles in the freezing cold. But it was they weren't holding seminars. They weren't teaching people to meditate. They weren't, in fact, all they were doing was like demonstrating their own discipline and beliefs. And what it did was it called out all the suffering of the people around them and made people like, it opened up all these hearts and stuff. So anyway, I think we should be careful about generalizing, or, you know, like you could say, individual liberation is selfish, but that was not selfish. They were not selfish. So,
I mean, that's what they said about the Buddha. I mean, it was his individual liberation, but as soon as he
Yeah.
realized it was, I gotta share this.
that's right, I gotta teach this, that's right. I've had people say that to me as somebody told me, oh, you're a Buddhist. Oh, Buddhists are selfish, I don't like Buddhists. I beg your pardon? Yeah, they're all sitting in caves, looking at their navels, you know, it's like, who's that? It's like, I'm not in a cave. But anyway,
And I
never
can't even
have
see
been.
my thing.
I can't even see it anymore.
Wrong religion altogether, right? You missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway,
I've never heard of Buddhists being navel gazers.
you,
Have
what?
you? I've never heard of Buddhists being, you know, those,
No.
all those things where you're looking at your nose and all of the, I mean, there's a lot of Hindu
don't
practices
do-
like that, but I've never heard of a Buddhist practice like that. But anyway.
No, but, and even I saw a really nice movie, I'm not gonna remember the name of it, but it was about these nuns in the mountains of Tibet who sit in caves, and their whole practice is there's only about maybe 20 of them. And they take turns, and so it'll be your turn to be in the cave for 3 years, and your sisters bring you food and stuff, but you're in the cave for 3 years. And so they said they see this practice as being yeast for the human race. They're keeping the yeast culture alive, which I really like. It's like, they're not doing that for themselves, you know, there's like, it's for the sake of humanity, anyway.
You do leave the cave and come back to the market.
You do, you trade turns, and then you go back and then your sisters go in and, anyway.
Is
I'll
that
try
kind
to
of part of
remember
that curiosity, like keeping yourself curious, keeping yourself being a student, so that you don't get into that teacher role of domination, of like, I have something to offer you, or like kind of that hierarchy.
Well, I wonder if you think about what yeast does, and I don't know for sure, but I believe that yeast provides the growth provides the energy for the bread to rise, right? So they are sustaining this kind of energy of openness and curiosity and all that stuff. So it's there, and
Remember, it was a response to the Chinese invasion, and they retreated up to the hill, and they were women, and so they were out of the way of the army and stuff, where all these monasteries were being torn down and demolished, and monks were imprisoned and so forth.
murdered.
So
Yeah.
the women went up there and really developed themselves, but I heard it as like yeast for in case in Tibetan Buddhism was wiped out as well. You know?
Well, there's that
But
possibility.
Tibetans really think of it in terms of like, there's no boundaries to the space, kind of, you know, so.
Well, and it's just like the monks that walked. It's like just their walking through the space brings the whole thing into
Right. There can be monks for everybody.
Their monk is right, exactly. So it is 6:30. Thank you for tonight. It was nice to have you here.
Another excellent presentation.
Yes.
Aw, shucks. So next week we'll talk about the Heart Sutra and
Heart attacks.
Heart Attack Sutra. Pema calls it the heart attack.
You know, it says a translation, but that it doesn't actually just list out the Heart Sutra, right?
Oh, it does.
For Zoom people.
Chapter
Yeah.
13.
Hey, Doyle.
If you look at 13,
Hey,
Oh, I guess
there's a
it's
little
the-
introduction and then
I see, it's just the last little bit.
there's a little bit of an introduction and then it
Reminds me.
yeah,
Heart of Hearts.
thus have I heard. Yeah,
Oh, I see, okay.
once the Blessed One was to Raja Kriha, Raja Kriha.
Gotcha.
So we'll talk about that next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Zoomers. I'm gonna end the video now and see you next time.